Hi everybody, welcome back to my channel. My name is Zara and today I am going to be walking you through what I read in the month of May and what I'm planning to read in the month of June. I read a fair few books in May and I had a mix of genres, predominantly still fantasy, but I did read across a couple of different genres. I also read some manga as well. With that in mind, let's jump in. So the first book that I technically actually started at the end of April, but I finished in June, was Blood Over Brighthaven by M.L. Wang. We are essentially following our main character, Siona? I don't know, but it doesn't really matter. We are following our main character as she enters into a scientific institution as the only female mage. And it's about her kind of trials and tribulations. It's about the relationships that she develops. And it's a standalone fantasy book that I think was a really good time. I think it was better than Sword of Kaigen, which is very beloved here on BookTube and across all other social media channels. But I actually enjoyed this one more. I think our main character was very fleshed out. I think M.L. Wang does a better job of writing singular POV stories than she does multi-POV stories, because we really got to understand this character by the end of it. We do have kind of not necessarily perspectives of other characters, but we do get time with other characters that also make this world feel quite enriched. I will be doing a full review on this book, so watch this space for that. I did give it a 4 stars. It was solid. It was a fun time. Next, I read 4 volumes of a manga that was recommended to me by Cyril. Cyril, I have to, from the bottom of my heart, thank you so much for recommending this manga to me. You all don't see what's happening behind the camera. You see a very, very, very small percentage of what is going on in any creator's life. I think it's really important to remember that. And while we're here smiling, talking about books, we have other things going on. It's very funny how the books that you read kind of reflect what you're going through. And when Cyril recommended Hideyasumi to me a couple of months ago, it's always kind of stuck in the back of my mind, because I've been wanting to read like a slice of life manga that really represents Japanese culture. And he told me about this after I finished Full Metal Alchemist, and he was the one who actually told me to start with Full Metal Alchemist too. So I have to thank Cyril for that as well. But he recommended it to me and I was able to find it. And only 7 volumes are out right now. It's unfinished. It was created by Kaigo Shinzo, and it is the most incredible manga I have ever read. Admittedly, I'm only on my 2nd manga, but you know when you read something and it just sings to your soul in a way that nothing else or very few other things can? Hideyasumi has done that for me. It is the most chill, calm manga that when you're going through a lot in life is the perfect tonic to that. It is the perfect tonic. I've had a lot of stuff going on these last few weeks, and especially when it's been getting busy, I've actually been reserving the Hideyasumi volumes for when those times are happening, just because it just is able to keep things in perspective in a way that nothing else that I've been reading has been able to. So I read the first 4 volumes kind of consecutively, and then later on in the month of June, I also read more volumes. I'll come on to that later. But it's just incredible. It's incredible. At this point in time, I have 2 volumes left. I'm just so upset because I don't want it to end. And it's not ended in the sense that it's finished, but I'm going to have to wait now until the volumes come out. But it is what it is. It's just so good. And I gave every single volume 5 stars because I honestly could not rate it lower. It would just feel criminal to do that. Then I read a self-published book that I've been wanting to read for quite some time. And this is from an author that I follow on Twitter. We've had some interactions. He seems like a really lovely guy. And that is Seas of War by João Silva. This is the first book in what I believe will be a trilogy. And that is called the Smoke Smiths Trilogy. And I thought it was a really, really solid fantasy book. I think this is one of those worlds that as we delve deeper and deeper into it, it's just going to get richer and more compelling and more interesting as we progress. The magic system is really cool, really cool. There's like an industrial aspect to this book that I really enjoyed. There's also quite strong religious themes about this book that I really enjoyed. I will be doing a full deep dive review on this, so watch this space for that. I gave it a 4 stars and it was very, very solid. And he's a very talented writer. Next up, we have a book that has been recommended to me by so many of you before, and that is Piranesi by Susanna Clarke. I finally decided to read it, folks. At the time that I'd finished Seas of War, I wanted something a bit shorter and something kind of less intense, because that is quite an intense book. And so I decided to pick up Piranesi. It's quite short and it's very easy to get through, and it's just beautiful. I get it. Like, I get the hype. I do. I really do. It's very rare that that happens for me, but it did. And it was just an absolute delight to read. Watch out for my review. Absolutely fantastic. Gave it a 5 stars. Next up, we have a book that isn't out yet. It will be coming out in January 2025. So when it is closer to coming out, I will be doing a proper review. But just so that you're all aware and so that you can all add this to your pre-order list, because you absolutely should, my next book was Water Moon by Samantha Yambao Soto. I'm so sorry if I pronounced that wrong. But this is a book that was just so whimsical, so beautiful. It was so stunning. It was so lyrical. It was just so good. It was so good. You know, I requested this on NetGalley. Thank you, NetGalley, for approving my request. And I'm always a bit nervous. I don't know why. I've just generally had pretty negative experiences with books that I've got from NetGalley. I had zero context on what this book was about. I was just very interested by the cover and the fact that it was set in Tokyo, which, as many of you know, I'm very interested in Japan. And I just thought, okay, magical fantasy set in Japan. Cool. I'll totally read that. And I absolutely loved it. Absolutely loved it. I gave this book initially, when I finished it, a kind of 4 or 4.5 stars. But upon reflection, there is absolutely nothing that I would change about it. It's quite whimsical. It's got a very like mysterious vibe to it. And we're essentially following our main character as she goes on a quest to find her father. The magic is just really cool. It's very unique. I think some of it is rooted in actual Japanese folklore. Correct me if I'm wrong. But it was just wonderful, guys. Like, it was so good. So good. 5 stars. Watch out for my review later on this year. Then I read a classic. And this classic is one that has had a fair amount of negative press. And that is because of the premise of the book. And that is Lolita by Vladimir Nabokov. This is a book I was never really sure whether I was going to read, but I went to Valencia a couple of months ago and they had a really beautiful edition of Lolita, and I thought, you know what, let's just give it a go. Like, you know, the premise of it is not necessarily something I'm looking forward to reading, but I'm interested enough that I think it, and I do think it's important to read books that make you feel uncomfortable. So I thought, okay, there's maybe going to be a rainy day that I'm going to want to read it, and I just thought, let's take the plunge. I also ended up buddy reading it with one of my patrons, Mandy, which I think made the experience a lot more interesting because her and I were talking about kind of our experience throughout. And I think this is one of those books you need to read it alongside somebody else because it is very disturbing, like very, very disturbing. And Lolita, for those who don't know, is a book told from the perspective of a man who is essentially pondering about sex and intimacy and physical relationships with children, essentially. And it's very, very, very disturbing. Like, it's weird because the book almost makes you feel sympathy towards our main character. That's not to say that I felt sympathy, but in some ways it does. To be very clear, I didn't feel sympathy towards him. I'm glad that the ending happened to him. But because of the writing style and the way that Nabokov writes, he feels very normalized, even though obviously a lot of what he's saying is outright disgusting and wrong. Like, it's just wrong on so many levels, It was just quite interesting to read. I have to say, it did make me feel very dirty, and I felt like I needed to have a shower every single time I paused reading because it is grotesque, and it's not one that I would recommend to most people, but I think it was a very interesting character study, and that was what was appealing about it to me. So I gave this book a 4 stars because the writing is stunning. Now, forget the thematic work, forget our main character for a second. The writing is absolutely breathtaking. And it has made me kind of more interested to read Nabokov's other books, which I may do at some point in the future. It was really solid in my opinion. I will probably do a deeper dive review of that book at some point. I gave it a 4 stars. It was solid. Next up, I started a little mini series, and that is the Unselected Journals of Emma M. Lyon. Now, this is a series that is expected to have 24 volumes. 7 volumes are currently out. As the time that I am filming this video, I've just started volume 4. And this, I have to shout out my Patreon, Matt, because he is the one who told me about this. He said to me, he was like, I know you like Jane Austen, and if you like that vibe, you know, you should check this out. I had a look and I saw that it was all on Kindle Unlimited, so I decided to get a free trial of KU. And I've just been absolutely addicted to this little mini series. The books are very short. They're maybe like 150 to 200 pages long. You can read them maybe in 2-3 hours, probably even less, depending on the size of the volume. But we're essentially following our heroine, Emma, as she writes diary entries about her days. It's just so hilarious. Like, hilarity ensues in every single volume that I've read so far. It's just a wonderful mixture of different characters and I just love it. I really do. And we have, you know, multiple love interests and they're all interesting in their own way. It is without a doubt one of those books that if you love Jane Austen, if you love the vibe of like Pride and Prejudice, you have to give it a go because it is addictive. I'm so sad that, you know, probably by the end of this month, I'm going to be up to speed because I think the books have been taking quite a while to come out just because the author is writing other stuff as well. But it's just so good. It's such a comfort read as well. I love reading it alongside other heavier stuff that I'm reading because it kind of gives you that light relief that sometimes you need. So I read the first 2 volumes of that. Then I read the next book with my patrons. We do a book a month, and this month we were kicking off The Empty Throne duology by Daniel Plansky, the first book being Those Above. The second book we will be reading in the month of June, and this was quite interesting actually. Some of them still haven't finished, but I think overall we had pretty similar experiences in the sense that the book is incredibly slow, which I think if it was a trilogy would be fine. It's a duology, so it doesn't really make sense for the book to be that slow. And so I think quite a few of the folks have kind of struggled to kind of make progress because it's quite dense as well in a very bizarre way, even though Polanski I wouldn't say is a dense writer. I think it was okay. I think for a duology it probably needs to be a bit more faster paced than book 1, so for that reason I ended up giving it 3.5 stars. I'm really excited to read the next one though because I think that's gonna kick off with a bang. Next up we have a book that was kindly sent to me by Jenna Pett. Shout out to Jenna, thank you so much for reaching out to me. She sent me a copy of a new South Asian fantasy book that I'd even go as far to say is a grimdark fantasy book, and that is Kavithri by Aman J. Bedi, and this was such a great surprise. I'd never even heard of it, and it only came out in May. I think it was May 16th was the release date, so it was very new. I think there's only about 20 reviews of it on Goodreads, but it's a new epic, again I would even go as far as to say a grim dark fantasy series following our main character Kavithri as she basically tries to find her family. And throughout that process, you know, she's kind of discovering her powers, she faces a lot of oppression, and we get a really compelling world that's built, which I think is basically a fantasy version of India. And we go through this journey with her as we also meet really interesting characters. This book really blew me away in the sense that I didn't really know what to expect. I ended up like only reading it in about 3 or 4 days, which considering the size of the book is pretty good for me, especially right now because life is very busy. But it was just such a breath of fresh air. As many of you who have been watching my channel for quite a while now will know, I'm always looking for kind of South Asian, Middle Eastern, North African, kind of anything that isn't the typical Western fantasy for quite a long time. So for there to be a new South Asian fantasy series to come out is just an absolute dream for me because I am also South Asian. So it was just really nice to be in a world that felt very familiar to me. A lot of the language that was used felt very familiar to me, even though I am not from India, but it felt like a world that I could potentially know. It was also very well written. I believe this is the author's first book, which I have to say was quite a big surprise for me because he writes like a seasoned writer. I did have 1 or 2 minor issues with it, but wait for my review to discover more. I gave this one a 4.5 stars, really solid. Can't wait to see where it goes next. So to finish off, I then read The Unselected Journals of Emma Emline Volume 3. So it was quite a nice month in the sense that I got some shorter stuff in, I also got some longer stuff, I got some classics, some sci-fi, also some contemporary. Like, it was just a really good mix, I think. I was quite happy with the books that I read in the month of May. So now, for the month of June, what am I going to read? I'm probably going to end up finishing Hirayasumi, and then I think I may pick up Vagabond, which I'm so excited to pick up. I'm so excited. Like, genuinely, I'm so excited. Because as many of you will know who've watched my channel for a while, I love Musashi, both as a character, but I'm also very interested in a lot of his philosophy as a, you know, as a real person. So I'm very, very excited to pick that up. And then I will be reading Those Below, which will be the second book in the Empty Throne duology by Daniel Polanski with my Patreons. And then almost certainly I'll finish off the Emma M. Lyon books as well. I am planning to read quite a few sci-fi books in the month of June, and the first one will without a doubt be Hero's Journey by Sterling E. Lanier. This is a book that was kind of put on my radar by one of my Patreons, James. Shout out to James. Without a doubt, sounds like something I would love. I'm also planning to read another sci-fi book called Vagabonds by Hao Jing Fang, which I'm really excited about. Then I'm also planning to read Embassy Town by China Miéville. I've read a few China Miéville books now, and this is one that I've heard is really solid, so I'm really excited to pick that up. It's also possible that I might read a Guy Gavriel Kay book or another KJ Parker book. I'm not really sure. As many of you know, I am a massive mood reader, so those are a couple of... I might also start Crime and Punishment by Dostoevsky. I'm not sure. I think I'll probably end up doing a similar thing that I did last month, even though that was completely unintentional, and read a nice mixture of genres. So yeah, that's what I'm planning to read in June. Let me know down below what you read in May, and let me know what was your kind of favourite read or your least favourite read, and also what you're planning to read in June. Thanks for watching, folks. It was a good month, and here's hoping that June is another great month. Stay safe, everybody. Take care, and I will see you soon. Bye.